It all happened in Oregon. My daughter looked me straight in the eye, picked up my suitcase, and tossed it like it was garbage. "You're holding us back. Move out," she said. And just like that, I left. I froze the family account. She wanted freedom, and I figured it was time she got a real taste of it. The suitcase hit the porch steps with a heavy thump, bounced once, then landed beside the dying alyssums I used to water every morning. I just stared at it. The leather was worn, that deep burgundy color fading. It was the same suitcase I brought with me when I moved in to help her raise her baby. Back when she used to cry every night from exhaustion and every morning from fear. Now she stood in front of me, arms folded tight, face blank, not angry, just cold, like she'd stopped caring altogether. "You're holding us back. Me, Kyle, the kids, all of us. You've made this house your prison, and we're done being your inmates." I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was past that. "You've got 3 days," she said flatly. I already called a locksmith. I looked down at the suitcase again. One of the zippers was broken, and a bit of my sweater was sticking out like a tongue. She didn't even bother to zip it properly. I bent down slowly and picked it up. The handle squeaked. My hands were steady. I remembered how shaky hers were when she first asked me to move in. Kyle was colicky. She hadn't seen a paycheck in months, and she was drowning. 3 days, I repeated softly. "Don't make this harder than it is," she said, tight-lipped. "Harder for who?" I asked. She snapped, "For all of us," but her voice wavered, not with strength, but with fear. Fear of losing control. I didn't fight. I didn't beg. I just walked past her and down the steps, dragging that old suitcase behind me. The wheels bumped quietly along the pavement. She didn't stop me. When I got to the curb, I pulled out my phone and called Alvin. He answered right away. "Elaine, I need my name off the mortgage," I told him. "She's asked me to leave." He paused. "Are you sure?" "I'm not staying where I'm not wanted. Start the paperwork today." He said he would, but reminded me she'd have 30 days to refinance before the loan defaulted. She wanted freedom, I said. Well, I'm giving it to her. I found a tiny motel off the highway, flickering light in the bathroom, loud curtains with flowers that had seen better days. I tossed the suitcase on the bed and unzipped it. She hadn't packed with care, just shoved things in like I was a mess to be cleared out. Like I was a crumpled napkin on her spotless table. I made tea in the microwave. Too hot. The mug cracked a little. She always hated my tea. "It smells like roots," she'd say. Funny, she never minded the roots when I was buying diapers. Or cooking dinner at 3 a.m. I pulled out my old notebook, still had Daniel's kindergarten doodles on the pages, and I started to write. Not to her, to myself. Just to remember. Day 1, not shocked, just finally seen. She wants the house, she wants quiet. But that house isn't just hers, not by law, not by heart. She never would have gotten that mortgage without me. She was, just 20, her credit trashed from that accident. Yeah, the one people whisper about in town, but never mention out loud. I walked into the bank and lied for her, told them she was stable, just going through a rough time. Nobody needed to know about the bleeding passenger, the hush money, the ignored therapy bills. I cleaned up the mess, and now she's cleaning me out. On the second day, she texted, "Don't forget your tea kettle and that dusty old mirror. The same mirror her grandmother gave me, the one I offered to hang in her hallway." She rolled her eyes back then. "It's too antique," she said. "It doesn't go with the aesthetic," her text read about the mirror. I stared at the message for a second, then deleted it without replying. Instead, I made a second call. "Alvin, just confirm. You've started the paperwork?" "Yes," he said. "The bank will notify her in about 35 business days. Without a co-signer, she'll have to refinance immediately. But, Elaine, given her credit, that's not likely." I already knew that. I finished the call in silence. He hesitated before asking, "Are you sure this is what you want?" I looked out the motel window, watching the wind push a dry leaf across the empty parking lot. "She wants freedom," I said softly. "I'm giving it to her. Just not with my name holding up the house anymore." That night, I dreamed about the crash, not how it really happened, but how it could have. In the dream, I didn't answer the phone at 2 a.m. I let the cops do their job. I didn't pay the lawyer. I didn't beg the other mother to drop the charges. I didn't protect her. In that version, she got arrested, had a mugshot, lost her license, no mortgage, no clean slate. But that's not what happened. What really happened was that I showed up. I cleaned up the mess. I made the nightmare vanish. I became the invisible framework behind her second chance. And now, she wanted a life where I didn't exist, not just in her home, but in her story. I had already disappeared on paper. The rest was just a matter of time. On the third day, I packed the kettle, the mirror, and my notebook. Then I sat on the motel's little balcony and waited, not for her to call, not for an apology. I waited for the silence to settle into something like peace. She didn't need me to explain what was coming. The bank would do that for me. She was just 20 when it happened. She'd just gotten her license and was driving that second-hand Honda Civic that still smelled like fast food and body spray. That night, she'd been at a party. Nothing crazy, just loud music and drinks stronger than she told me about later. She said she was fine to drive, said everyone else was worse, said she was being responsible. That's what she told the police, but the tire marks told another story. So did the crushed windshield and the fact that the other car, a family minivan, had a 5-year-old inside. That child lived. The doctor called it a miracle. But the injuries were bad, and the other mother wanted answers. She wanted someone to pay. I remember the knock on my door, the way my daughter's hands shook when the cops brought her home in cuffs. I remember the hospital waiting room, how everything smelled like cleaning chemicals and despair. I remember holding her while she cried in my lap like she was 5 years old again, sobbing, "I didn't mean to, Mama." And I believed her. It was a horrible mistake, but I couldn't let it define her life. So I did what mothers do. I went to the woman whose child was hurt. I brought soup. I brought photos. I brought money. Every dollar I could gather from savings, home equity, even my retirement. I promised her my daughter would never drive again, would never touch alcohol again, would spend her life making it right. The woman agreed to a private settlement. No trial, no headlines, no criminal charges. I saved my daughter's future, and I never told a soul. At first, she was grateful, hugging me so tightly it hurt. She brought flowers. Once, she even washed my feet while crying, whispering, "I don't deserve you." But over time, something inside her changed. Guilt hardened into something else. Resentment, maybe. Embarrassment. I'd seen her broken, and she didn't want to be seen like that. She started rolling her eyes more, mocking my advice, calling me outdated, laughing at my flip phone, correcting how I talked when her friends were over. One night at dinner with Kyle, she joked, "My mom's addicted to being needed. She wears her trauma like it's a badge." I didn't say a word, just cleared the plates. The older she got, the more she rewrote the past. To her friends, the crash was because of bad brakes or bad weather. No one heard about the vodka, the blood, the crying child. She told Kyle she'd paid her dues, done therapy, and moved on. She said she didn't talk to toxic people anymore, the ones who held her back. Meanwhile, I was in the guest room, cooking meals, driving Kyle Jr. to daycare every morning. I paid the bills. Part of the mortgage was still under my name. Still, when she introduced me to her coworkers, she didn't say, "This is my mom." She'd just smile and say, "She helps with the kids," like I was some kind of long-term nanny, not the person who gave her a second chance at life. She stopped calling me Mama, switched to Elaine, said it felt more equal. "You're not just a parent," she once told me, her tone calm like she'd practiced it. "You're also a person. You should live your own life and stop projecting onto mine." That one hurt. Not because it was mean, but because it sounded rehearsed, like someone else had said it first, and she'd clung to it like gospel. When she told me to leave, I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice or cry. I'd already done my fighting years ago, in courtrooms, at kitchen tables with late bills spread out like battlefield maps, in hushed conversations with lawyers and mothers who wanted justice. Now she wanted a clean slate, and I just wondered what she'd do when that slate was truly clean. When every safety net she never saw was gone. When there was no one left to catch her fall. I walked out of the house without turning back. But later, sitting on the motel bed, I wrote in my notebook, "There's a kind of memory that doesn't live in the mind. It lives in consequences, and someday she'll meet them. I just hope she's strong enough to shake their hand." It was a Thursday when I saw the photo. I wasn't looking for it. I was scrolling through a church community page, checking in on old friends, when her name popped up, tagged in a post by Janine, her college roommate. Janine used to crash on my couch during school breaks, eating my banana bread like it was made by angels. Now she was in the picture, smiling wide, arm in arm with my daughter. My daughter held a champagne glass and threw up a peace sign. The caption said, "To fresh starts and finally cutting the cord. Proud of you, Em. No more dead weight." I stared at it. The post had over 200 likes. I clicked through the photos. There were gold and white streamers, a cake that said, "New," chapter, and a glittery banner that read, "Out with the old." One comment read, "Wait, is this the mom you used to talk about? The living guilt trip lady?" Someone else replied, "She finally kicked the parasite out. Took long enough." But the one that stopped me cold was a picture of a wine glass next to a handwritten sign that said, "Don't inherit trauma. Burn it." And underneath, her initials, E. My daughter had made herself into a quote. I sat there, with the phone in my lap, the air in the room suddenly heavy. It wasn't the cruelty that hurt most. It was how easy it all looked. How easy it was for them to laugh, to turn love into a weight, to turn memories into manipulation, to turn me into some kind of warning sign. I thought of Kyle Jr., probably asleep upstairs in the room I used to rock him in when he cried through the night. Did they tell him Grandma left? Did they say I chose to? Or did they just stop mentioning me at all? I put the phone down, poured myself a glass of water. My hands didn't shake. My breath stayed calm. Then I picked up the phone again and called my lawyer. "Michael," I said, "I need to move forward with full removal of my name from the mortgage. 1346 Weller Street, effective immediately." He paused. "Elaine, I thought we agreed to give her 30 days to prepare." "She's already had her celebration," I said quietly. "She's ready." Another pause. Then, "Understood. I'll draft the paperwork. She'll receive notice within the week." "Thank you," I said, and hung up. Then I sat in that small motel room, watching the light outside grow dim and soft, like it was slowly making its way out too. The motel window let in a soft, fading light, like someone slowly dimming the lights on a stage. The show was over. Now came the aftermath. The next day, someone sent me a screenshot. It was a post from another person at the party, a woman I barely remembered. Her message said, "Some people are like mold. They hide in the dark corners of your life until you shine a light on them, and then they run." Someone had commented underneath, "You mean her mom, right? Heard she lived off them for years." I didn't reply. I didn't defend myself. What was I supposed to say? That I paid the down payment on that house? That I co-signed the mortgage? Because my daughter's credit was wrecked after that car accident nobody's allowed to talk about. That I cleaned their kitchen, paid their electric bill 3 times last winter, and walked little Kyle Jr. to school every morning because she couldn't function without her morning yoga? No one would believe it. Or worse, they might believe it and still not care. Because people love a freedom story, and every freedom story needs a bad guy. I guess I was the easy one to blame. Later, I walked out to the motel mailbox. I dropped in 3 envelopes. One was to the mortgage lender, removing my name. Another went to the homeowners association. No more emergency contact, no more shared bills. And the last was to my daughter. No threats, no guilt. Just a note that said, "You have everything you asked for now." I hope you find peace and clarity in this new chapter. I'm no longer tied to this house, legally, emotionally, or financially. Love. No signature, no phone number, just that. That night I made soup, the kind she used to call old lady broth, just bones, ginger, and leafy greens. I ate it slowly, spoon by spoon, like I used to feed her when she was little and sick. Then I lit a candle, not for her, but for the part of me that finally stopped explaining. I didn't need her to say sorry. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted her to see what freedom really looks like, without a safety net, without scaffolding, without me. The envelope arrived on a Monday. It was thick, manila, and official looking. My name typed neatly next to hers, mine on top, hers just below. I didn't open it right away. I made a cup of tea, sat by the window, and let the sunlight touch the envelope, like maybe it could melt through the paper and burn it from the inside. But paper doesn't burn that easily, especially not the kind that carries old promises. Inside were copies of the mortgage papers, my signature on page 3, hers scrawled on page 4, amendments, renewals, my guarantees. I flipped through them like pages from a journal I didn't remember writing. Then I called Michael, my lawyer. "She's not going to be able to refinance, is she?" I asked. "No," he said without hesitation. "Not unless her credit's magically fixed since last year, which I doubt. She's missed a few payments, not terrible, but enough to raise red flags. And don't forget, she defaulted on that business loan from 3 years ago? The cafe? You remember?" I remembered. I remembered covering the last month's rent. I remembered employees calling me in tears when their paychecks bounced. "She'll have 30 days?" I asked. 30? "From the notice," he confirmed. "After that, if she can't refinance, the bank can start the foreclosure process." She has no idea, does she? Probably not. Not until the letter shows up. I looked over at the window again. The curtain fluttered gently in the breeze, just enough to move. She had a party, Michael. A party to celebrate kicking me out. "I saw," he said. "Facebook. Brutal." "She's happy," I said. "She thinks she's free." He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, in that gentle lawyer voice he uses when he's known you too long, he asked, "Ela, are you sure you want to go through with this?" I didn't answer right away. I walked over to the dresser, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a photo. She was 16, with braces and chipped nail polish, holding a school award. I was behind her, hands on her shoulders. She had no idea what I'd already given up for her, even back then. She told people I was a parasite, I said quietly. Michael sighed. "I'm sorry." "I don't want to ruin her, Michael," I said. "I just want her to understand what I was holding up." There was a long pause. "I'll finalize the paperwork," he said gently. "Good," I replied. And then, as I hung up, I added, "She wanted the storm to stop. She forgot. I was the one holding the umbrella. Just a plain white envelope, but it carried everything. It looked like any other envelope, plain, a little heavy, but this one had the bank's seal on it. That small symbol made it feel heavier than anything I'd held in years. But it wasn't even meant for me. It was for her. I found out hours. Later, when I checked my phone, 1 missed call and 5 voicemails, all frantic. I didn't listen right away. I waited. When the 6th call came through, her voice wasn't angry anymore. It was cracked, shaky, scared. "Mom, please, they said the house is in default, that you pulled your name from the mortgage, that the bank's going to take it. I didn't know, I didn't think. Just call me back, okay? Please." I played that voicemail 3 times before I picked up the phone and called her back. She answered instantly. "What did you do?" she snapped, her voice full of panic. I stayed calm. I didn't yell. I didn't say sorry. "I did what you asked," I said. "I took myself out of your life." "This isn't funny, Mom." "I'm not laughing. You're punishing me just because I asked you to move out." "No," I said softly. "I'm just letting the truth breathe. And the truth is, you could never afford that house on your own." There was a pause, the kind that hangs in the air before someone either starts crying or yelling. "You're unbelievable," she hissed. "You always said it was about family, that you were helping, and now you're just taking it all back." "I'm not taking anything," I told her. "I'm stepping aside. That's different." "You're ruining me." "No," I said gently. "You did that on your own. I just stopped covering it up." Silence. Then, in a bitter tone, "You're doing this to get even, to prove a point." "I made my point a long time ago," I said. "The day I signed those bank papers for you, after you almost hit that child and wrecked your future. I made my point when I cleaned up your mess and never told anyone." Her breath was loud and heavy. "You think you're righteous. You think this makes you noble." "I think it makes me honest. I'll fight this," she snapped. "I'll take you to court. You'll regret this." I didn't flinch. Her threats felt empty. "Then I guess we should both be ready to tell the whole story," I said. "I already submitted the accident records, the settlement, the confession you wrote by hand." "You wouldn't," she whispered. "I already did." She hung up. The next morning, I went to the courthouse, not because I had to, but because I wanted to hand the papers in myself, face to face. I gave the clerk a thick envelope full of things I had hidden for over 10 years. The police report, the insurance papers, the hospital bills from the little boy's family, and the note she wrote after the accident, when she was still honest. Still scared, still aware she'd done something wrong. She'd signed it in blue ink. I signed mine in black. I didn't do this to ruin her. I did it because if she was going to use the legal system to try and twist the truth, then the truth deserved to be heard. She wanted to paint me as some bitter old woman. But I was just someone who remembered. And paper, well, paper doesn't forget. A week later, the foreclosure notice went up on the door. 30 days. Bank inspection coming. She called again. I let it go to voicemail. "Mom, they're putting a notice on the door. I need to talk to you. Please, I have kids. I don't know where we're going to go. This can't be happening." That was the first time she said we. Before, it was always me, my house, my space, my life. But now it was we. I didn't call back. Instead, I sat on the little porch of my rented room and wrote a letter to her oldest, Kyle. I folded it into an envelope and mailed it. "Dear sweetheart, I'm sorry you have to move again. This isn't your fault. Grown-ups make mistakes, and sometimes they take a long time to learn from them. But you are loved. You are strong. And you are not alone, love, Grandma. No talk of the house. No blame. Just love. The kind that doesn't ask for anything back." When the bank finally locked the doors, I watched it on the local news. They didn't say her name, just showed a plain house with a white door. A foreclosure notice flapped in the wind. I recognized the porch. I saw the wind chime I'd hung there years ago, now tangled and still. And I whispered, "You once called me your shelter." I only stepped aside so you could feel the rain. The courtroom was cold, not because of the air, but in that way that marble and silence can make a place feel like it doesn't want you there. But I wasn't afraid, not anymore. It didn't matter what time of year it was. That courtroom was cold, Not just the kind of cold you feel on your skin, but the kind that settles in your bones. Cold like the way a judge looks over her glasses at two people who used to be mother and daughter. She sat across from me, my daughter, looking worn down and shaken. Her hair was messy, her face blotchy from crying and not sleeping. The lawyer she'd scrambled to hire last minute was flipping through papers, not even looking at her. Right in the middle of it all sat Kyle Jr., just 7 years old. His shoes were too small. His hands were folded in his lap. He didn't cry. He just watched, always watching. The judge spoke, her voice steady and serious. Given the foreclosure and lack of a stable home, the court must choose a temporary guardian for the child. Her lawyer quickly jumped in. Your Honor, my client is actively looking for housing. This is just a temporary situation. I stayed quiet. I wasn't there to fight. I was there for the boy. The judge continued, reading calmly from her papers. Emmeline Morrison has filed a petition for emergency guardianship, citing the child's need for a safe, stable environment. Documentation includes school pickup logs, medical permissions, and character references, my daughter snapped. She's trying to steal him from me. No, I said, my voice soft and even. Her eyes burned into mine. You want to take everything. My house. Now my son? I didn't take your house, I said gently. The bank did. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences. She stood up, her voice cracking. Don't do this. Please, he's all I have left. He's not a thing you have, I said. He's a child, and he deserves a warm bed and a safe place to sleep. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked empty, like someone who had run out of excuses, out of people to blame, and had no strength left. I'm begging. You, she whispered, don't take him from me. I looked at the judge, then at Kyle Jr., who still hadn't looked away from me. I'm not taking him, I said. I'm holding him, until she can. The judge leaned forward. Ms. Morrison, do you plan to seek permanent custody? I shook my head. No, Your Honor. I want her to get back on her feet. But until then, someone needs to keep him warm and safe. My daughter sat down and sobbed. Quiet, broken sobs. The judge gave a small nod. Emergency guardianship is granted to Ms. Morrison for 90 days. We'll review monthly. Visitation to be supervised until stable housing is secured. The gavel fell. Just like that, I became, officially, what I had already been for a long time, his safe place. Out in the hallway, she sat slumped on a bench. I walked over slowly. I wasn't there to gloat. There was no pride in my step, only weight. I didn't do this to hurt you, I said quietly. She didn't lift her head. I didn't do it to win either. Still nothing. I did it because when you were a baby, I held you in my arms, just this small, and someone had to fight for you when you couldn't fight for yourself. She still wouldn't look at me. I crouched down beside her. I'm not your enemy, I said, but I also won't let your child become your excuse. Her shoulders trembled, maybe with sadness, maybe with shame. I couldn't tell anymore. I stood and turned to walk away. Behind me, I heard her whisper, Will he hate me? I turned back. No, I said gently, but he will remember who held his hand when the storm came. It all started to unravel after that, not from a news outlet, not from a big public expose, just a blog post. It came from someone I barely remembered. Laurel, I think her name was. She had been the aunt of the little boy my daughter injured. In the accident all those years ago, she wrote a simple post on her personal blog. No drama, no hate, just quiet honesty. There was once a child in our family who couldn't walk for nearly a year because a girl, just 20, drove drunk and hit his mom's car. That girl cried in court. Her mother paid for everything. We stayed silent, for the boy's sake. But now I see that girl on Instagram, celebrating her freedom from the very woman who saved her. And I can't stay silent anymore. It didn't take long. Within hours, it was everywhere. Shared, screenshot, retweeted. People started digging. The foreclosure? Public record. So was the court case. The truth, hidden under silence and legal documents for years, started spilling. Out like a box of secrets tipped over. My daughter had built her whole brand on healing, coaching, breaking generational trauma. Now people were connecting the dots. Every quote she'd posted about growth, every video about forgiveness, every podcast on letting go, comments flooded in. You mean the past where you almost killed a kid? How do you teach healing when you destroyed the woman who healed you? Celebrating freedom in a house your mom paid for? The nerve. She shut off the comments. Then she deleted her videos. Sponsors started pulling out. Workshops were canceled. Clients stopped showing up. And then she tried to post an apology. Some vague. She posted a teary video talking about her struggles and mental health, hoping people would understand her side. But it only made things worse. The internet, as harsh as it is, can always sniff out the truth, or the lies. And when an apology comes years after the damage and just minutes after getting caught, people don't buy it. News started spreading fast. First it was a small local paper, then a bigger one, and soon even a well-known TV anchor left a voicemail asking for an on-air interview. I turned them all down. Not because I was scared, but because I'd already said everything that needed saying, through court documents, custody battles, and long, painful silences. One reporter even showed up at my door. "Don't you want to tell your side of the story?" he asked. I just smiled and told him, "This isn't a story. This is my life, and I'm still living it." He didn't get it. Thought I was hiding. But really, I was just choosing peace. 3 days after her blog post exploded online, she called me. Her voice was raw, barely more than a whisper. "They're calling me a monster," she said. I didn't say anything right away. I didn't even know she was still around. "That woman, Laurel, she's lying, right?" she asked. I took a breath. "No," I said softly. "She's remembering." She got quiet, then tried to defend herself. "But I've changed. That was years ago. I'm different now." I didn't argue. I just said, "And so was your thank you." She sniffled. "I was going to tell the truth one day." I almost laughed. "You had 100 chances," I said gently. "What do I do now?" she whispered. I paused. "You sit with it. Let the storm hit you. Feel the mess. Really see it." There was a long silence. Then she asked, "Do you hate me?" I closed my eyes. "No," I said, "but I can't protect you from this. I already saved you once. This one's on you." After that, she disappeared. Some folks say she moved out of state. Others say she changed her name. I wouldn't know. I'm not looking. Because the truth isn't some weapon you throw. It's a window. And if you don't open it yourself, sometimes life will swing it wide open for you. That morning, I sat across the street with a warm cup of tea in my hands. The cup was old, chipped on one side, with a faded tulip on it. But it still held the tea, still held the warmth. Across from me stood the old house. The windows were boarded up now, and a red and white sign in the yard read, "Temporary auction, final notice." The grass was wild, overgrown, like it had stopped trying to be a lawn and had become part of the earth again. The porch paint was peeling like old skin. The wind chime I once hung above the steps, tiny blue ceramic bells, was broken and still, only clinking when the breeze tugged just right. Beside me, Kyle Jr., my grandson, knelt on the sidewalk with a piece of chalk in his hand. Tongue peeking out the corner of his mouth, he was focused on his drawing. Stars, suns, a crooked little house with smoke curling out of a heart-shaped chimney. He had no idea the house was being auctioned today. He didn't need to. To him, it was just another sunny morning, another cup of tea with Grandma, another sidewalk waiting to be covered in color. I sipped my tea slowly, letting it warm the deep, cold corners inside me, the kind of cold left behind when someone you love decides to paint you as the villain in their story. But villains don't get up early to make tea for little boys who still talk in their sleep. Villains don't sit quietly while the world gets the story wrong. There were no crowds that morning, no reporters, no curious neighbors watching through curtains. No one stopped to ask me what really happened. No one said, "You were right." There was no parade for the quiet woman who stayed behind and carried it all. And that was okay, because today wasn't about getting even. It wasn't about winning. It was about coming back, about placing the truth where it really belongs, not on the front page or in trending hashtags, but in those gentle, quiet places. Like where a child draws with chalk and a woman finally lets go of the weight she's carried too long. Somewhere between what was and what comes next. That's where dignity lives. A man in a navy suit showed up at the house, clipboard in hand. He unlocked the door, pinned some papers to the mailbox, and hammered in a new sign: "Auction in progress, cash buyers only." He never even noticed me. And that was fine. I wasn't there to be noticed. I looked down at Kyle's latest drawing. He'd added a little figure next to the house. Curly hair, wide dress, holding a steaming cup. "Who's that?" I asked with a smile. He looked up at me and grinned. "That's you. You're watching the house." I nodded. "I guess I am." He handed me the yellow chalk. "Draw something." I thought for a moment. Then, right beside the little house, I drew an umbrella. I blinked. "What's the umbrella for?" he asked. "In case it rains," I said. He gave a serious little nod. Smart. Then he went right back to drawing. We stayed like that for a long time, maybe an hour, just two people sitting on cracked pavement, turning it into something beautiful. The house behind us used to pretend it was a home. I remembered birthdays in its living room, cakes baked too late, candles melting too fast. I remembered crying into dish towels, trying not to let the baby hear. But I also remembered laughing, the real kind. The kind you don't know is rare until it disappears. And I remembered the silence, the slow, cold pulling away. How my daughter started closing doors when she used to leave them open. How she stopped, calling me Mom, and started using my name. How love slowly turned into schedules and instructions. And still, I stayed. Not because I didn't know better, but because sometimes, when something's broken, we hold it gently. Hoping it'll stop hurting us if we're just kind enough. He tugged on my sleeve. "Grandma, what happens if nobody buys the house?" I smiled. "Then it'll wait, until someone's ready." He looked at the house, thinking, "Are houses sad when they're empty?" I looked at the boarded-up windows. "No," I said. "They're just quiet, like people who need rest." He nodded, slow and thoughtful, then went back to his chalk drawings. I didn't stay to see who ended up with the house. I didn't care if it went to a young couple, a builder, or stayed empty forever. That house was never really mine. It was just something I paid off, a place I patched together, a chapter I lived through. I'd walked its rooms carrying burdens nobody else saw. I stitched over the cracks with pieces of myself. But I never belonged to it, and it never belonged to me. Once I held back a storm for my daughter. Today I let it rain. Not because I wanted her to drown, but because sometimes the only way you learn to swim is by standing in the water on your own. I set my chipped teacup beside the drawings, slowly stood up, brushed the dust from my skirt. "Come on, sweetheart," I said. "Time to go." He looked up. "Can we come back?" "Maybe," I said. "But this story's done now." And he nodded, because somehow, even at 7, He already understood what endings feel like. We walked away, hand in hand, past the auction sign, past the curb, past the wind chime, which rang once, just once, as the wind picked up. If you've ever been pushed out of your own life, if someone once looked at you and said, "You're holding us back," like all your years of love were some kind of shame. If you were called a burden in the very house you helped build. If your silence was mistaken for weakness, your patience for being out of touch, your age for being done, then let me tell you something no one else will. Truth doesn't shout. It survives. It lives through every storm of denial, every new way of thinking that writes off what came before, every sharp comment made behind clenched jaws and closed doors. Truth lives in the woman who still remembers every person she forgave. It lives in the grandmother who rocked a baby to sleep while someone else got credit for keeping the lights on. It lives in the quiet one, the one who listened, who watched, who remembered everything. This is Her Yesterday by Emma. A place for voices the world tried to move past, not to beg for pity, not to scream for revenge, but to finally speak. Clearly, out loud. Here we tell the truths other people were too loud to hear. Truths about betrayal that lasted for decades with no one watching. Truths about what we gave, what was taken, and what was never returned. Truths about dignity, silence, and survival. These are the things we never had time to write down, because we were too busy cleaning the table everyone else ate from. If you're here, it's because you're ready. Ready to listen to the stories that don't make the headlines, the ones whispered in kitchens after the kids go to bed, the ones remembered. On porches, told in rocking chairs by hands that shake, but voices that don't. Some stories will make you cry. Some will make you angry. And some, if you've ever been forgotten, ignored, or underestimated, they'll feel like coming home. So if you believe silence holds power, if you know wisdom doesn't need to be loud to be true, if you feel in your bones that some truths take years to bloom, then subscribe to Her Yesterday by Emma. Because some stories are born in storms, but they end in light. And some women don't get the last word. They get the final truth.